Hi. This is exciting. Sort of a big event. Like many of you, not all of you, I was born during that weird cusp generation, right? So I had rotary phones, and yeah, give it up for rotary phones. The piece of technology should come back. People would make fun of me because my number had a lot of nines in it, right? And that would literally take longer to dial. It would be like, so if you were in a hurry, having to, it was like, oh my God, right? And then, you know, entering into college, you know, PCs and word processors open up this like magic of being able to take a 4-page paper and turn it into a 5-page paper just by using Courier. It was this gift that came down from the heavens, right? And then, you know, less than a decade ago, we have this thing that used to be the size of a wall suddenly fit in your pocket in the shape of a smartphone, and it connects us to each other, it connects us to information, and more importantly for this, it connects us to videos on platforms like YouTube. So living through that time for me was so freaking exciting, because I grew up in a household with art and music and science, and suddenly there was this explosion in these tools that, you know, allowed me to do all these things without having crazy expensive equipment or really difficult to get access, and without the burden of knowing what was good. Right? Nobody told me. I could just do it in my spare time. And so after I got a degree in neuroscience, and then I spent the next 2 years doing everything I could except neuroscience, right? There was like a little programming, a little animation, some sound mixing, some writing, but all of it focused on this crazy new play space called the internet. And so right in about 2001, right when my parents were kind of worrying about me and wondering why they spent so much on college, I had my first viral hit, right, which was called How to Dance Properly. And it's very, you know, deep, philosophical stuff. But it was like a little flash animation, and it blew up overnight. And this is before YouTube, by the way, right? It's before social platforms. It spread by email, which is incredible that anything spread by email. I just like to pause for a second, right? That's how it spread. Millions and millions and millions of people. And so this is when I first met Jonah Peretti. It was in 2001, and he's the founder and CEO of BuzzFeed. And he had a very similar thing happen to him, where he had tried to order a sneaker and customize the side of the sneaker with the word sweatshop on the side, right? And then the ensuing conversation with the brand over email went viral because it was hilarious, right? And then, but the crazy thing is, right, so like everybody's looking at it and everything, and like a week later, he's on national TV having a debate with the global head of PR for the brand about sweatshop labor. And he was just a student at the time, right? And so both of us were wondering why. Right? Why does some content seem to spread so much more efficiently through the ecosystem than other types of content? I don't know if you guys remember The Dancing Baby or Subservient Chicken, right? These were massive, massive online hits, the early ones, and it would be very difficult to use the word quality to describe what was going on, right? And I have no doubt that you guys go onto YouTube, and probably even with some of our content, you're just like, really? 10 million views? Like, why? What is happening here? And so that's what we're obsessed with at BuzzFeed, is understanding why. Why does some stuff share better than others? And the place that we start to try to understand that is to look at the very basic mechanic, which is the share, right? And in order to do that, I mean, first of all, you know, sharing is now so massively powerful because of mobile, right? Everybody's got mobile phones. You're watching, you know, before you go to sleep at night, and you can just share with a little click, right? And it's the most powerful form of modern distribution. And so to try to understand why people share, you just start by asking yourself, why do you share things with other people? One thing that we did was we tried to look at a pretty interesting little clue, which is the text that people use when they share something, right? The share statement, it's sort of the text you use to justify why you're sharing it. And when we looked at all these share statements, we started to see some really interesting buckets, right? The first bucket were statements like, oh my God, that's totally me, or I thought I was the only one that did this, right? And we call those identity shares, where you're using media to share a part of your identity. The second category is when you say, like, this totally cracked me up, it'll crack you up, right? Or this inspired me, it'll inspire you. That's called emotional gifting in our world. And the third category is statements sort of like, hey, we were just talking about this the other way. We call that social information, where you're broadcasting information that is already pertinent in your social sphere. So I'm going to show a 30-second example just to try to drive it home a little bit better.
That's not how you fold the towels.
It doesn't matter how you fold a towel.
It does matter how you fold a towel. If you want it to fit in the closet, you have to roll it. Oh my God, could you chew any louder?
This goes on here. It takes 2 seconds.
Well, then the next person who comes in will do it.
That's not the point. I don't see why I have to put the utensils face down.
Because when they're sticking up like that, if someone trips and falls, they're gonna impale themselves and die.
That's literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
So here's the thing, at face value, it's not, I mean, it's shot well, but it's not like movie quality or television quality. I mean, there's moments that suggest some form of narrative, but it's not really a story, right? And so there's this question of why it shared millions of times, that video. And the interesting thing to start looking at is people shared it with their significant others to bring up the arguments that they have. But there's something very impactful about that, right? Because it's not the perfect film about relationships, it's the perfect opportunity to talk about yours. It has actual usage in the environment. And so people share to connect, to reminisce, to broadcast their identity, emotional gifting, all these different things. But the point is that everybody in this room should be thinking about the role that your content is playing in people's lives. Not just for consumption, but what can they do with your content in their social environments, in their spheres. And then the trick is to try to figure that out. And if you're not doing that stuff, try to make that content. And so figuring out how it applies to your brand is hard, right? It's not easy. It requires thought and work, and more importantly, it requires a place to do it, where risks are kind of mitigated, that you have opportunities to experiment and play, and you can get some real-time feedback and all that. So when we started our studio 2.5 years ago, that's why we started on YouTube. And it's why we consider YouTube such a powerful partner today. I mean, it has all these ingredients, right? It has all these ingredients which allow you to do impactful, deep, wide-reaching work. And the ingredients are this, right? The first is massive scale on both desktop and mobile. The second, powerful real-time analytics that help you get farther along to the goal. And the third is amazing publishing tools. These are the 3 keys to your success on YouTube. So BuzzFeed's a multi-platform company. But YouTube is still at the center of how we think about this stuff, how we test and learn towards understanding the impact that content has on users and how modern brands are built. So just some sort of statistics, the fun part. We release about 50 videos to our YouTube channels every week. We just crossed the 5 billion all-time, lifetime YouTube view mark. Thank you. Yeah, the numbers on YouTube are just staggering. 60% of our audience is mobile, which is radically significant. And then in the last 6 months, we've averaged 185,000 likes, 25,000 comments, and 500,000 hours of watch time every day. The way we approach our editorial video is the same way that we approach branded content, right? We try to find connections with the parts of the brand messaging that need to resonate, and we try to find connections to what we know about why people share content. But it's not just about reach, right? It's about reach times impact and finding the right blend of those two that maximizes the results. Here's an example of some of the branded content that we do.
Dear kitten, since I have hissed at you the customary 437 times, it is now my duty as the head of the household to begrudgingly welcome you. Perhaps you are here to replace me, but I must do my duty and educate you on your new surroundings. as Maximilian once did for me. Rest in peace.
So the cool thing about this is that it was not developed like a traditional TV spot, right? It was preceded by a whole series of test videos where we tested all these assumptions about cat ownership identity, about the tone and the style, about different ways of integrating the brand into the spot. We wanted this campaign to be something that was agile and flexible, that we could like jump on success when it started to happen. And the resulting effort drove amazing reach and, more importantly, measurable impact in brand recognition and purchase intent. Measurable. And today, Dear Kitten is a series, an ongoing series with over 59 million overall views. And we're about to release Dear Kitten 4. So here's the overall question is this. How are you as a brand testing and learning? Right? It's kind of crucial. Everything's changing very quickly. There's all these new opportunities to learn. So how are you doing it? And then how are you learning about how your messaging can create content that has usage to your audience, right? How are you thinking about how you can take advantage of the modern distribution opportunities? It's time to ask those questions, but more importantly, it's time to start doing something about it. Thank you so much.